Hello, and welcome to the Super Duper Civilization 6 tutorial for Dummies crash course. In the interest of time, many things will have additional details displayed on the screen. If you're familiar with Civ 5, or are one of the 3 people who watched my last tutorial, this symbol will appear to denote items which are new in Civ 6. Here's the opening screen. If you've never played a Civilization before, there is a tutorial available which takes about 30 minutes to go through. If you're playing this as a multiplayer game, select Multiplayer, Internet Unified PC Play if you're playing on Steam, and enter a join code here. If you're playing on EGS, just hit Multiplayer. Here we are in our first game. Let's talk about different elements of the UI so we can reference them later on throughout the tutorial. Starting in the bottom right, you've got the big button. Simply smash this and the game will guide you through pending actions before eventually letting you end your turn. Next to that is the unit ribbon. This is a context-sensitive menu that will change depending on whatever unit or city you have selected. In the bottom left, we have the minimap with lenses, yields, and strategic view. In the top left, we have the world tracker, as well as research and civics, which replace the cultural trees from Civ 5. When we unlock government and religion, they will also be available here. In the top right, we have the world leader bar, victory screens, and reports. With that out of the way, let's found our first city. Whenever you start a game of Civ 6, the game will curate your starting location. It's best just to found wherever you start. Let's take a look at our new capital. The shield icon in the top represents the garrison's strength, which will damage melee units attacking the city. A quick note here is, unlike Civ 5, cities cannot bombard enemies until you build city walls. Once you build walls, it will add more HP to the city in the form of a defense score. On the left is the city's current pop, as well as the number of turns till growth. On the right is the current production. If there's a problem with the city, a red icon will appear to the left of the name. You'll notice with the city selected, the ribbon has changed to the city interface. Here you can buy tiles to expand the city. This can be especially useful to snatch up resources, keeping in mind that the maximum range of a city is 3 tiles from its center. You can also see here the natural expansion rate, and note that buying a tile doesn't affect the rate of natural expansion. You can also manage the city's production or buy units with gold or faith. Typically, faith units are used to spread or combat religions, while buying units for gold simply immediately grants you that unit. Don't neglect this ability. Purchasing a settler in the early game can give you a big advantage. New in Civ 6, there are now no longer empire-wide negatives to building additional cities. The downside is you will need to manage each city's growth individually. Note the amenities and housing indicators. Amenities equate to happiness. High values here encourage growth with a small percentage boost to food, while low values can cause starvation and revolt. You primarily increase amenities with buildings and luxury resources, while war weariness from long-lasting and poorly proceeding wars can reduce them. Housing represents a soft cap on population. Running out of housing can reduce the growth of a city by half or more. Especially important for housing in the early game is access to fresh water. As new technologies are researched, a number of options will become available to increase housing with policies, buildings, tile improvements, and more. Once you have a handle on your capital, it's time to plan for expansion. The most important consideration for new cities is good access to resources. Look for areas with many bonus resources or unique luxury resources. While luxury resources still make for good tiles regardless of how many of a certain type you have, only the first instance of each will benefit your cities with additional amenities. Similarly, while strategic resources will limit the types of units you can build, they become redundant after you have 2 of a kind. Another consideration is for available space. New in Civ 6, wonders are now built directly onto tiles. Many of these give a new type of bonus called an adjacency bonus. These can benefit certain types of tile improvements or boost another building new to Civ 6, districts. Districts are also built directly onto tiles and receive boosts for being adjacent to certain types of terrain. Each type of district will allow more of the same class of building to be built in it. For example, the campus houses the library and university. both of which cannot be built if the campus district is absent. Take care when placing districts. Once placed, they cannot be moved. One other important note about districts is the maximum number available to be built by a city is limited by its population. This means placing a district will inherently specialize a city. Take note of the military encampment district. This district will allow you to build units which require strategic resources for one strategic resource instead of the usual two. This can be very important if you have limited access to these resources or are trading for them. Now that we've covered the UI and cities, let's talk about actually taking a turn in Civ. First up is unit movement. New in Civ 6, units must now be able to fully pay the movement cost to enter a tile. Most units have 2 movement, meaning if you wish to move one tile and then enter a forest, you'll be stuck with one unusable movement outside of the forest. This is also true for making melee attacks, which means in Civ 6, it is very difficult to chase a fleeing enemy. This is especially important when planning your initial exploration in a new game. Unlike Civ 5, the barbarians here are vicious, and your primary obstacle to overcome in the early game. They will send out scouts, and if they discover one of your cities, these scouts will retreat back to the camp. If they reach this camp, they will spawn an attack wave of 3 to 5 units who will march straight into your territory to wreak havoc. To combat this, you'll need to raise an army early and use it properly. There are 4 main types of units in Civ: melee, ranged, cavalry, and anti-cavalry. To effectively attack or defend against enemies, it's best to use a formation with melee units in the front, anti-cav on the flanks, ranged units in the second line, and cavalry on the edges. Try to use your ranged units to soften or kill enemies before moving in with your frontline troops. Use your cavalry to flank enemy ranged units or siege equipment. Before executing an attack, be sure to review the combat calculations to make sure it's a favorable outcome. Keep in mind that terrain will affect the strength of units. Forest and hills confer defense bonuses and can also block line of sight, which will prevent ranged attacks from hitting distant foes. Once the barbarian encampments are dealt with, it might be time to set your sights on another civilization's cities. This will require the use of siege equipment to deal with any city with defenses prepared. In the early game, simply bringing a battering ram will allow your melee troops to defeat ancient walls. Later, when walls become more advanced, you will need to shift to catapults or even more sophisticated siege weaponry. Use these to destroy the defenses before moving melee troops in. Keep in mind, unlike Civ 5, city walls are highly resistant to any damage aside from bombarding siege units. With your empire secure and your enemies fleeing before you, it's time to talk about how you make bank off all your new territory. First up is improving resources. Returning to Civ are builders, with one crucial change from previous versions of the game. Now builders instantly complete any upgrade, but they have a limited number of charges. This means no automated workers, but you will need to continuously create more workers throughout the game. Since workers are now build and then spend units, they are no longer responsible for building roads. Instead, trade caravans will automatically build roads on their way to their destinations. After a number of improvements have been completed, you'll likely have an extra strategic or luxury resource lying about. The only thing to do with these is to trade them to other civs. You can click on any leader in the leader bar to instantly go to the diplomacy window. Later on, civic research will unlock more trade options, such as open borders, defensive pacts, research agreements, and more. Speaking of research, let's examine the 2 research trees. For both civics and technology, all research nodes except the beginning text will have what is called a Eureka bonus. Accomplishing the listed item will automatically apply 1/2 of the cost of the research for free. You can activate this bonus at any time, including if the technology is currently being researched. You'll notice in the civics trees a new item called an envoy. This is a new type of resource used when dealing with city-states. In addition to unlocking them, you also gain them over time at a rate determined by your influence gained per turn. To use an envoy, simply pull up the city-states window and assign them. Each city-state grants bonuses at 1, 3, and 6 envoys assigned, determined by their type. Additionally, if you have at least 3 envoys and 1 more envoy than any other civ, the city-state will name you their suzerain. This effectively makes you allies. They will share any improved resources with your empire, and in addition, if an enemy civ approaches them, they will attack their units. Be on the lookout for city-state quests, which upon completion will grant free envoys. Additionally, if you are the first empire to discover a city-state, they will grant you a free envoy. Let's move to the mid and late game now to discuss more advanced items. As your civics and technology expands, several new items will appear in the top right and left of the UI. By the world tracker, government, religion, great persons, and great works become available. Government is unlocked from the civics tree and will allow you to build a bonus your civ with color-coded policy bonuses. Feel free to slot different types and experiment here. After locking in policies, they will become free to change whenever you research a new type of government, or can be changed for a small gold fee. Great people are a returning Civ feature. However, now in Civ 6, not all great people are created equal. What a great person is capable of doing will be shown in this window. The first Civ to reach the required amount of great people points will earn the ability to recruit that great person. However, depending on your strategy, you may want to wait and let another civ take the current great person. This will leave you with first dibs on the next one in that category. Similarly, if you find yourself in dire need of a great person, they can be purchased either with gold or faith at a rate determined by how many great people points you currently have towards recruiting one. Arguably the most important great person is the Great Prophet. Receiving a Great Prophet will allow you to found a religion, assuming one is still available in the game. When you found a religion, you choose the bonuses that following that religion will bestow upon cities and civs. Choose carefully and note that some bonuses affect all cities or people that follow it, while others only benefit you as the creator of that religion. Once you have a religion, missionaries, apostles, inquisitors, and gurus can be purchased with faith in any city with a holy site district built. Missionaries can spread your faith to other cities, while apostles, gurus, and inquisitors are designed to protect your religion and attack others. The first few apostles may also further enhance a religion with more bonuses, and you will also need an apostle to start an inquisition. Inquisitors will remove religion from cities other than the religion of the inquisitor. Take care when planning where to build inquisitors that you do not build them in cities which have fallen to enemy religions. Keep an eye on the religion your civ follows even if you do not found one. In addition to gaining bonuses, it is also possible now in Civ 6 to win the game with religion. If more than 50% of the world follows a single religion, the founder of that religion can win the game. Tourism is another victory condition which heavily relies on great people. In order to achieve a cultural victory, you will need to attract more international tourists than any other Civ is capable of attracting domestic tourists. To attract tourists, you will need buildings and wonders which create culture, as well as a curated set of great works and artifacts. Artifacts can be dug up by archaeologists once they are unlocked, while great works are created by great artists, musicians, and poets. A quick mention for the other 3 methods of winning Civ. Domination involves capturing all opposing Civ capital cities. Science involves completing the research tree and building the spaceship to Mars. And the final method of winning is to simply have the highest score at the end of the turn limit. We will wrap up the tutorial back in the top right with the espionage and report screens. Spying is a mid to late game civic unlock which will allow your civ to recruit a certain number of spies. These units do not move on the world map and instead live in the spy panel. They can be assigned to your own districts to protect them from enemy spy actions, or sent to various enemy city districts to complete nefarious deeds. When assigning spies to protect districts, it's important to remember that they will also defend adjacent districts. Finally, examine the world rankings and reports. After other civs have all been met, they will appear in the world ranking screen. Here you can gauge your performance relative to other civs and make plans to pursue your own victory. You also have access to a number of reports which can help you manage your empire, such as the City Status Report, which can help you identify if cities are thriving or floundering. This concludes the tutorial. I hope it was informative, and I look forward to seeing you in Civilization.